Homegrown Lecture Series. I'm Paul Winski with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and I'm your commercial horticulture agent. Today I will be talking about proper pruning in the landscape. But I do want to bring up to a date that next month we will have holiday meats, not just turkey by Mr. Shannon Dietz. And then to close out the year, we will have plantable Christmas tree alternatives by Brandy Keller. So we are finally in the third quarter, and if you're like me, I'm sure you are probably enjoying this weather. The other thing I just want to remind you about is our homegrown podcast. We just had a new episode drop. I met with Dr. Becky Bowling, who is our urban water specialist, and we talked about how landscapes in the urban areas and water conservation and things like that occur. So if you haven't given us a listen, wherever you download your podcast, we can be found, or you can scan that QR code and it will take you right to it. So without any further ado, let's get started into today's program. So proper pruning in the landscape. All right, we get a lot of questions about pruning, when to prune, how to prune, different things like that. So this is going to be a general conversation or an overview of pruning, and hopefully you come away with it with a little bit better idea. There's some resources that the team will be posting throughout the presentation that you can click and download and help you out as you get started. So why do we prune? And the three main areas that if a tree needs to be pruned, there's either a safety issue, all right, for the health of the tree or for the aesthetics. So safety is there a dead limb? Is there something that could possibly fall on the house or fall on your car? Could it become a hazard in the walkway? For health, is there damaged, diseased wood, damage from either fungus, bacteria, or is it insect damage? So we want to get rid of it. We want to remove it so it doesn't affect the overall quality of the tree. And last but not least, the aesthetics. As you can see in this image here, this tree is looking, really nice with regard to the amount of flowers, the production on it, the overall shape of the tree. So the aesthetics is, working with that tree, developing it so it has a nice canopy. If it's a blooming tree, a flowering tree, it produces the flowers in abundance when it's supposed to. If it's a fruit-bearing tree, we want to make sure that we're pruning so that tree is able to produce a good quality fruit when it's supposed to throughout the season. When to prune is sometimes the million-dollar question. And as you can see in my first bullet there, this is the answer extension agents like to use. It depends. In general, late dormant season is best time for pruning, okay, for most pruning. As you can see here, I always find, especially with trees, it's always easier to prune when they are dormant, if they are deciduous. You can look into the tree, you can see where there are issues or potential problems, and you can take care of it. But that's not always the case. Say we have a storm comes through and you've got, it's middle of summer, hurricane comes through or something like that, and you've got damaged branches. Well, you're not going to wait until, dormant season to remove those branches. You're probably going to go ahead and have someone come out and take care of them. So, certain shrubs, azaleas, once they're done blooming, you're going to prune them after bloom. If you wait too long, if you were to bloom them now, you'd be removing the buds that would be opening for you in the spring of the year. So understanding when the plant either flowers and evergreens are one type, deciduous trees are another. So you have to have an understanding of the plant and its life cycle. But in most cases, Pruning in the dormant season is best. There's less stress on the plant. The temperatures are cooler. We were in a drought this past summer. That pruning then was added stress on that plant along with the drought. So if you could get by not pruning, unless it was something that was a major issue like a disease or a pest problem, um, put it back off until those temperatures drop down and things cool down. You want to promote health when you prune. So, and we'll go into this a little bit more detail as we work our way through, but you want to remove any dead or dying branches. They're not, there's no benefit of them being there. They could fall off. They could be a hazard issue. They could be a port or an area where other diseases or pests can get into. So why leave it there? Get it cleaned up, cut it down to that healthy wood, and allow that tree to start to seal the wound, heal itself, and continue to grow. Branches that rub together, and we see this a lot, are prime spots where one of those branches has to be removed, because that rubbing wears away the bark, it wears away the tissue, and allows diseases or pests to come in. And then you don't want to leave branch stubs. So as we can see in this image, here's a branch stub. Now that it broke off, there was probably some decay in through there, maybe a storm came through or something, but there's no reason to leave that there. That should be pruned off, cleaned up, and put that tree in the best possible position to be successful. So the intended purpose, why are we pruning it? In most cases, as in this with the red bud, is we want to encourage either flowering or fruit production. So we want healthy branches, and that we can then have very good flower production on, and that's the key. If you're growing peaches or something like that, you want to have strong, healthy branches also. You don't want to have a lot of competition, because you want to have good quality flower production, which will result in good quality fruit. If you have hedges, all right, hedges, you want a dense habit on it. And so that, pruning or shearing your hedges, that's a pruning process. So we want to make sure that we are pruning them on a regular basis. We are removing that soft growth. If we let the growth get too hard, too woody, it'll put a little bit more stress on that plant. So we want to do it on a regular basis. Soft, tender growth comes right off and works, and the plant is happy. And then the other one is if you're into topiaries, and some people like to have them by the entryways of their houses and things like that, but you want to, they are going to have to be pruned and maintained maybe a little bit more than a tree like this that we're seeing in this image. We want to encourage or maintain that desired plant form. So whether it's a spiral or a pom-pom or a cone or what have you, you're anybody that's been to Disney World, you've seen topiaries there in the forms of the characters. They are out there working on them on a regular basis in order to maintain that form and keep that plant healthy. I mentioned about hazards, protecting people and property. So if you have a hazardous tree, it should be removed. And so you're probably wondering, what is a hazardous tree? I've got a tree in my yard. I'm not sure if it's a potential hazard or not. Just a rule of thumb is if the canopy, if you see 30% or more of the canopy is dead or bare, there's probably something going on there that you need to have that tree looked at. And you should probably have a certified arborist come out. If a tree is leaning, say 30 degrees or more, there's something going on with the root system, and you need to have that tree looked at and evaluated. So just two rules of thumb: 30% canopy dieback or death, get a specialist out there, or a tree leaning more than 30 degrees, you might want to get someone out, a professional out there, to take a look at it. Weak or narrow angled branches. So, in most cases, branches come off at a nice, you know, not quite 45 degrees, but anything that say is a tight angled, 15, 30 degrees, something like that, um, that should probably be removed because it's not going to be a healthy branch, and it potentially could cause problems for the rest of the limb. Um, Anything where you start to see branches that are starting to hang over the house, um, or they're resting on the house. And I speak from some experience with this. We had a limb that was leaning on the roof of the house. We left it up there a little bit too long, and it caused some damage to the shingles. So not only did we have to get the tree pruned, but we had to have some work done on the roof. So if you start to see it getting too large and causing and leaning on a house, you want to get it cleaned up. Likewise, if you've got a driveway or patio and you've got tree limbs that are starting to come out and lean over, you might want to have them taken care of. Eliminating branches. Say you're on you've got a corner property and you've either got street lights or traffic signs. If it's on your property, it's your responsibility to clear that out. So for safety reasons, so that could be seen. If you've got overhead wires, you've got the wrong tree in the wrong place, leave it for a certified arborist. Don't play around with it. It's not worth it. And here's one that drives me crazy, and you'll come across this whether it's at a mall or a commercial place, but shrubs or trees that haven't been pruned that block the vision at an intersection, or you're trying to come out into the flow of traffic. You've got to inch out more and more and more, and then almost you're halfway out into the intersection before you can even see what's coming. So if that's the case, prune them on a regular basis so the average car can see safely down the road, to make sure that it's safe to enter traffic. Tools. Here are some of the tools, the basic tools that you need. So pruning shears, get yourself a good pair of pruning shears. And you want what we call bypass, and that's where the blade passes over. You don't want an anvil where the blade comes down and hits a solid piece of metal. You want a bypass type blade because it results in a nice clean cut. Lopping shears. So your hand pruners will handle things up to about 3/4 of an inch. And it depends on the type of tree and the type of wood, hardwood, softwood, things like that. Lopping shears, same type. You want bypass blade, but they can handle a little bit larger, up to 1.5 inches. Some of them you can go up to 2 inches. The hand saws are great for larger material, anything over 1 inch. And remember, these hand saws are what we call pull saws. So they cut when you pull the blade towards you. When you're going away from yourself, it is not cutting. So you want to make sure that when you pull, you are getting down into that wood, pulling it, cutting it nicely. And then when you go away, it's not on the cut side, it's when it comes towards you. And then, if you have hedge clippers are great. They're also great if you've got a lot of perennials. If you've got to shear some perennials and things like that, hedge clippers are great. The pole pruner is great. Again, it's got a bypass blade on it, which we see down in through here. So that'll handle, about 1.5 inches in diameter. But you've also got up and through here, you've got, again, another pull saw on it. So as you pull down, that is when it is cutting. So that allows you a little bit more reach. I remember as an undergrad pruning trees in the winter up in Pennsylvania, 20 degrees, wind is whipping, and you're out there with a pole saw, pole pruner, and it builds character. Let me say that. But these all work extremely well. Small chainsaw, it's up to you. I have a small electric chainsaw, not electric, but battery power. I use it sparingly, but it's nice to have. But if you have a good pair of clippers, some lopping shears, and a handsaw, you're probably good to go. So some of the guidelines, and I like this diagram. because, and you can find this online, because it really shows you if you can manage these problems or these issues, your tree is going to be much happier and perform much better. So you can see the list over here of what to remove, but I'm going to talk about, we're going to start at the base of this diagram and work our way up. So remove girdling roots. Okay, so sometimes, especially with container trees, if you do your job early, if you planted the tree and it's a container, loosen up those roots. And if you see any early girdling, prune it while it's young. It will not miss it. It will not be an issue. It hasn't established any kind of structural integrity yet. So take care of them then. Can you cut it when it's older? Yes. But if you can take care of it when you first plant it and plant it the right way and get those roots out, you'll be fine. When we talk about suckers, suckers are going to come from the base of the tree, and that's what these two rising up here look like. This can occur, some species naturally sucker. Sometimes if a tree is planted too deep, it will sucker. Sometimes if the tree is stressed, it will sucker. So just keep an eye out, but cut these right at the base, remove them, and get rid of them, because we don't want them competing with the main part of the tree. Low growing branches, we want to get rid of them gradually. As the tree gets older, you can remove that, because if you're mowing, you're probably walking into it. It could cause issues that way. And probably it's not growing that well because of the shade from the rest of the canopy that's above it. So remove that. When we talk about crossing branches, here's one. So we see this branch coming over wherever there's an overlap. If there's two branches and it hasn't started to rub yet, remove one of them. In this case, what I would do is, because of the angle of that branch, I would take out this one. Okay. And so if this was healthy and it's not hasn't been rubbed on yet, I would take out this branch. We talk about water sprouts. Water sprouts are similar to suckers, but they come off the branch and they come straight up, almost at a 90-degree angle. So whenever you see growth like that, remove it, because what's going to happen, it's going to grow up into the rest of the canopy, and it's going to cause problem. It's either going to eventually be a crossing branch or potentially have some other issues. And we want these branches to be healthy and produce a lot of foliage, so it can photosynthesize. Here we can see there's a lesion there written in. So we want to get rid of that branch because it's broken here. We've got some issue going on there. So that branch would come out. This one, we've got a great angle. So remember when we talked about angles, here's one when we talked about that narrow attachment. So that just, it doesn't look normal, where all these other branches are coming off on nice angles. This one is going more vertical than out. So this is when we talk about narrow branch angles, we want to remove that branch. Here again, we've got a branch that's growing towards the center. That's not normal. We want the branches to grow out, so you would remove that. Here's some crowding. We've got a lot of branches. We've got a lot of things going on here, especially these three. We've got, for whatever, something happened, these buds broke and these branches developed. And so I would clean those out. This one is misformed. We're going to get rid of it because it potentially can break, with storms or things like that. If the tree is small enough and you start to see what we call co-dominant leaders, okay, so you've got, most trees have a single growing point, and we want to have that because there's hormones that force that to occur and keep that producing nicely. If you have what we call co-dominant leaders, you want to remove one of them. And in most cases, you're going to see one of them isn't as aggressive or growing as well as the other one. So in this case, this co-dominant leader, I would remove that and allow this one to take over. We don't want that competition. All right. So this is a great diagram, just the basics. If you can notice these and be able to identify it and prune those out, your tree's going to be much happier and grow much better. So we talk about pruning cuts. Where do I cut? How do I cut? So here's the anatomy of a branch here. So we've got our trunk, we've got our main trunk, and you can see this, what we call the branch bark ridge. And this is where the bark from the trunk meets the bark from the limb. And so, you can walk out your door and look at the trees around you, and you will start to notice this. Okay, so the branch bark ridge. That's a mouthful. Say that 3 times. And then we've got our limb that comes off of it, and then we have what we call the branch collar. And the branch collar is where you want to make that cut if you are to prune off the limb. And you might be saying, well, why not cut it back here where the branch bark ridge is? Because it'll be a lot cleaner and a lot, smoother on the trunk itself. The reason why we don't want to do that is because we expose a lot more tissue, a lot more wood if we were to cut back through here. Trees seal or compartmentalize their wounds. All right, and if we cut here at that branch collar, we get a nice clean cut. The cells will end up doing this. Here we see this is what the cut would look like, the correct pruning cut. And over time, these cells will callus over and seal that wound. And that's fine. It takes years. It's a slow process, but that's what the tree will do. If we were to cut back here at the branch bark ridge, we would see a cut like this. Look at the difference, the area of exposure here, cutting back to that point as opposed to this point. The problem is then the callus tissue may not develop around the entire wound. It may just develop on the edges, and it's going to take longer, and it may not even seal over completely. And then you have a wound, and you've got potential site for disease or pests to attack. So that's why we want to cut at the branch collar, not at the branch bark ridge. Larger limbs, we do what we call a 3-cut branch removal. So if you have a large limb and it's heavy, we do a first cut is anywhere, say, from 8 to 12 inches out from where it's attached onto the trunk, and we would do an undercut. And you only make it about 1/4 of the way, 20% of the way in. So we make an undercut, and then what we do is we come above it. And it could, they say here an inch. It could be a little bit further above. Again, it depends on the size of the branch and the weight of the branch. And we're going to make a regular cut from the top down. Why do we do this? Because if we were to just cut here at number 3, the weight of that branch would swing down and potentially rip the bark down the side of the tree. And as you walk around, look at some trees, and you will see where they did not do this 1, 2, 3 cut. And you'll see I'm sorry, let me go back up. You will see a rip of the bark. And again, any kind of wounds, potential disease, potential insect problems. So we do number 1 cut underneath, about 1/4 of the way. We come down and cut number 2. And then we come back here to number 3. We cut at the branch collar, but now we're only cutting a stump that's maybe a piece of wood that's, maybe 12 to 8 inches long. And it's a lot less pressure and stress when we make that cut. So we make that cut, it will be nice and clean, and we're good to go. So we want to remember branch collar. We want to look at where the branch bark ridge is, and we want to cut where that branch collar is. All right, so now I'm going to show some pruning demonstrations. I was out, we're going to look at some pruning of perennial. We're going to look at some just basic cuts on a citrus tree that died on me from the freeze, but it's great for demonstrations. So we will look at that also, and we'll look at a vitex that I've got that has some water sprouts in it that definitely needs some TLC in the way of pruning. So not all horticulturists are on top of things, but in that video, I'll show you some of the things to look for. And then I'll also show you a video with regard to removing a branch that has died back and how I took that out. So sit back, enjoy these videos. If you have any questions, post them in the chat box, and they will be able to get back to them once the videos are done.
So on this one, this is Salvia Indigo spiers, and you can see how we've got more spent blooms on this one. Now I could come in and deadhead this just like the other one, but I'm going to cut this one back a little bit harder because you can see this plant is quite full, quite aggressive, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit harder. So I'm going to prune this one a little bit more. You can see there's a lot of growth in there. So I'm going to take this one back pretty strong. And I'm not afraid. This plant just thrives, does much better. You can see I got a nice big clump, and I'm probably taking about at least 50% off on this. And with your perennials, you need to do this on a, depending on the variety, on a pretty regular basis. I know the bees are going to miss these flowers, but it needs that to sort of catch its breath and just to help the overall health of the plant. So I will work my way around here. You can see the difference already. You can see it's not, I'm not doing each individual stem. I just sort of clump them together, give it a cut, come in through here, clean them up. And there's still going to be plenty of foliage on there, so that plant can, still do photosynthesis. We're cooling down. It's just overall, the plant's going to be much happier. There you go. We can see we're making our way around here. We're almost done. So it's not really, it's not a fancy process. As long as you're leaving some foliage on there, you're in pretty good shape, which is what we need. Sort of find from the base of the plant and come up, and then that gives me a pretty good idea of where I need to prune it. We've got the overall same shape of the plant, but we're just pruning it a little bit harder. You can see on some of these older stems where it's been pruned earlier this season and where the stems break. If you look down in through here, you can see it was pruned here earlier, and then these breaks came, and then that's what led to this growth. So the plant definitely benefits when we talk about pruning and deadheading, especially your perennials. It just works so much nicer. The plant prefers it, and it's just going to continue to perform well for you. So there you can see there's just a few more left to clean up. But overall, that'll be good. You can see there's some flower buds down in there, but this is what you want to see. A little bit stronger prune than just a deadhead. We got rid of some foliage and things like that, but the overall shape of the plant is still there. So we'll talk to you soon. We're talking about pruning, and we want to clean this up. Now this is, of course, a citrus that took a hit. back in the freeze last year, so you can see it's not happy, but it's great for demonstration. And that's what we're going to use it for. And so when you're in extension, you a simple prune because this branch is growing inside. If this tree was healthy, I am going to just cut right here. And this is dead wood, so it might be a little bit more difficult, but you can see there we go. That's the type of cut we would make because you can see how this branch is growing up inside. And so we would want to open up the canopy. We would also want to take off this cut also. So you can see it's a nice smooth cut. These bypass pruners come over and make a nice clean cut. Now our next cut is going to be this larger branch, and you can see this, again, I'm going to use my larger lopping shears. This is for branches that are thicker, probably over 2 inches at least. And again, this is where our branch collar would be on a healthy tree. And I'm going to go in and prune this out. And you can see it's older, it's dead, so it's a little bit tougher to work, but here it comes. Again, a nice smooth cut on it, so you can see. And what that does is, on a healthy tree, that would then be able to seal over. Okay, so we're looking at, this is a live oak, and you can see how there's 3 cuts here. There's one directly above my head, and you can see the way that callus tissue is coming over, and that's when we talk about a tree sealing its cut. So that cut was made right at the branch collar, and you can see the tissue that's coming up over it. If you step over to this side, there's another cut just above it, and you can see nice sealing is occurring. Now this doesn't happen overnight, it takes a lot of time, but that's what you want. You want the tree to be able to seal that, to compartmentalize any potential damage. If we look down here, here's one that's completely sealed over, so you can see a difference in the bark. So this is what this tree's been here since this house was built, so it's over 20 years old in ground. This is probably an early cut, but you can see how that has sealed over. It's now putting on the bark layer, and the tree continues to grow and be healthy. Now we're going to look at pruning this. This is an elm tree, this variety A-Lee, and you can see this branch here definitely needs to be pruned. So, some of these varieties of trees will what we call self-prune. They'll just sort of, whether it's a lack of light, and it's next to a live oak, so there's definitely been a lack of sunshine on it, but it definitely needs to come out. And you can see it's already starting to put that sealing layer of bark around it. So we are going to cut this back in through here to give it a nice clean cut and for it to seal. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to prune out a little bit of the top first to lessen the weight. So I'll prune out a little bit of the top, and then we'll come down here and make the finishing cut. What I'm going to do is since this, I thought I'd be able to use some lopping shears, but I'm going to go with this. So this is a reciprocating saw, but some of the companies now, this is companies, Diablo, but I know Milwaukee also makes it, but they make a blade, if you've got a reciprocating saw, that's for pruning, and this can cut up to a 9-inch piece of wood. So I like it. It's a lot easier to use for me than using, I do have a battery powered chainsaw, but I like this a lot better. It gives me much better control over it. So I'm going to use this to clean it up first, and then we'll make that finishing cut. So as you can see, I'm lightening the load. This branch will be much easier to cut now without having all of that other wood on it. I am going to also cut this one down here just to take a little bit more. So very easy to use. Okay, and since this splits, we've got to cut this one down. So I will readjust my ladder. This branch is a little bit taller. Actually, I'm going to come at it from this way. My camera person will catch me in case I do fall. Let's see. Actually, I think I'm going to cut right there. At least get it started. Okay. So if I had not done that, all of that weight from that branch would have been possibly coming down as I make that final cut. Now I have much less weight on it. We want to get rid of those older branches because they're possible sites for insects or disease to come in, and we definitely don't want that. So now we can clean this up and make a nice fresh cut where it will be able to seal. So what I'm going to do is I will cut these off and then we'll make a nice cut in through here so it will seal up. So I'm going to cut from here first. Okay, and then I'm going to take this one off now. Okay, so now all I have is this stump, and we don't want to leave this stump here. So I want to get, you can see the bark collar is coming right around here, both sides. So I'm going to make a nice cut here. So we'll have a fresh cut. The bark will be able to come over and seal it like we are seeing here. If you come around on this side of the tree, see how this is sealing up? So the cut was made. The bark is now coming over and sealing that wound. It will seal it off and it'll be safe for the tree. The tree will perform much better with that sealed up. And that's what we want to promote on this, on the other side with that cut. So let's go back over here. We're going to go ahead and get this. So I'm going to see that branch collar is like right there. So I'm going to come in through here. I don't want to cut right up against it. I want to come like that so that branch collar will seal on over it. There you go. So that's a nice clean cut, little bit of tear there, but that should be fine. The red is just from the paint on the blade, but you can see that's a much nicer cut. Now that will allow these cells to start to heal that cut. So that's the best way, the easiest way. You want a nice clean cut, follow that branch collar, and then it will seal itself.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed those videos. This is one source or resource that I think everybody should be aware of. And this is part of the International Society of Arboriculture. And this is the website is treesaregood.org, all one word. When I get questions about trees, I really do funnel a lot of people, especially if they need to have a tree evaluated and they need to find an arborist. And so you can see right here, find an arborist, find a professional. You click on that, it takes you to the link. You pick which country you're in because this is the International Society. You put in your zip code and it will generate a list of certified arborists. So these are people in the industry that are up to date on their trainings, on their CEUs. It's not somebody driving around in a truck with a ladder and a chainsaw saying that they're, a tree arborist. These people are certified. And so I definitely feel confident in working with these folks. I have used this in the past to get some work done. And the other thing is if somebody says they're an arborist, you can verify their credentials. You can ask, hey, if you are, can I get your number and can I, verify it? Hey, you're the customer. You can ask for that information and do it. So treesaregood.org. There's a lot of other educational resources in there, a lot of good information. So by all means, use that site as needed. So I hope you enjoyed this talk on pruning trees in the landscape. I did want to give a quick plug. November 11th, we are hosting a Houston Urban Tree Conference. It is going to be held out at the new Houston Community College Katy campus. It's a beautiful campus, and you can see the speakers that we've got there. So if you're in the industry or if you're just interested in trees, we've got some great talks on using plant growth regulators. This one is really going to be interesting from David Marks from Environmental Design on how they moved large trees in order to reform the landscape there at the Leach Teaching Gardens at A&M. Dr. Apple's going to cover current tree issues and then managing scale, which is an insect problem that some of the trees have. So by all means, please feel free, to join us. You can go to scan that code or go to the Eventbrite website there, HUTC 2022, and register. Lunch is included. It's going to be a great day. So to close out for this month's program, I'm glad you could join us. If you do have any questions in the future, please feel free to contact us. I'm Paul Winski with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, Harris County. And Harris County, keep gardening. Glad you can join us and have a great day.
Thank you all for attending, and great job, Paul. And we look forward to seeing you at our next program. Thank you all.